there's an unexpected thing that happens when you accomplish your grand vision, or when you're close to it, when you feel like, you're on the precipice. And people might use different words to describe it, but it's a combination of disappointment and confusion and like surprise of, is this it? Like, is this what I've busted my ass all these years, maybe even decades for? And it's not that the grand vision isn't sweet or that we aren't happy we got there and are proud of ourselves, but it's this strange, like, flatness of like, oh, that's it. Like, now what? And it often happens because we have strived and put so much effort and energy and sweat, blood, tears, sacrifice into this thing that we thought was it in some way. Maybe not definitively, but that this was the reason for our being, at least for the time that we're striving. But we're not really thinking about what's next, because you can't worry about what's next. There's too many things that are occupying and requiring your energy and your attention. But when you near it or when you accomplish it, you start to have space, because you now are no longer striving. You're no longer investing those blood, sweat, and tears. You're no longer going to sleep at 1, 2, 3, maybe never, because you're like, I need to do this thing. I'm trying to build this thing. And the thing could be a business. It could be the corner office. It could be some accolade. I've heard people talk about it, this feeling when they've sold a company, when they've finished an Ironman, when they've completed some major, massive passion project, anything that took your dedication and your time, because it was a part of you, like part of your identity. And when something becomes so embedded with your identity, this pursuit, this excitement, to a degree, the like pain, it makes the journey worthwhile. And when we're on it, it's like, fuck, nothing else matters. Few other things matter. It's not that you don't love your family. And if you have kids, it's not that you don't care for your kids. It's just that there are a few other things that you invest your entire soul into that if you didn't really think about what you wanted to experience on the back of that, if it was really outcome driven, of selling this company, of completing this Ironman, of whatever, then you're kind of left with an emptiness, because the massive space that energy used to occupy doesn't need to occupy that space anymore, because there's not much left to do. You've done so much. And oftentimes it's because you were doing. You didn't really have to think about how you felt. You didn't really have to think about, what does this mean? You didn't really have to think about, okay, then what? When this happens, what is this all for? Because you knew what it was for, the grand outcome. But so often when we set outcome-driven goals, this happens a lot with money or like an achievement. It's a moment in time when you hit that number, when you sell your company, when you achieve the title, when you get your medal. Then you're like, okay, where does all that energy, that passion, that sense of purpose go to? There's nowhere for it to go anymore, because you're done. And when it has become such a deep part of our identity, it becomes a massive kind of crisis of identity, of who are you without this thing that you have not only explained yourself as, people have understood you as, you have understood yourself as. What are you if not this thing, if not this title, if not CEO, if not the achiever, if not the marathon trainer or the Ironman trainer or the, kit car builder, whatever it may be? Like, who are you if you're not this thing? And I get most excited for people at this phase because it's so exciting, because you are on the precipice of being able to reimagine possibility for yourself and your life. And you have a new opportunity. However, I understand and I've been there. It is terrifying because you're just like, this is how I've understood myself. So if I'm not this, like, who the fuck am I? And there's security in being able to say, I am blank. I have this dream. I am chasing this goal. I have invested years, decades into it. And once it is over, it is a loss. There is a grief. And whether you think of it as grief or not, a loss is a loss, whatever process you have to go through to process that loss. And this has happened to me like a few times where I set this massive target and I got there and I was like, fuck, like, okay, now what? And then who am I if I don't explain myself as this anymore? The first massive target I set when I was 10, I was like, I'm going to be commissioner of the NBA. I was a massive basketball fan, but I was also a girl who wasn't allowed to play sports and by my family, but also there was no like, storyline that I was like, oh, clearly there's a path for me to become an athlete. And so I set my sights on, to me, it was the next best thing, which is like, okay, well, if I don't play sports, I will run sports, right? Every sports system is run by people, the league. And so it was like, commissioner is very simple. It was like, top job, David Stern, commissioner, done. And I chased that dream for almost 15 years. I applied for one job out of college. I had a bunch of sports internships, but I applied for one job out of college to the NBA. I got in and I was there for 1 or 2 years and I just kind of thought, okay, I'm set. I'm like, I just need to like keep climbing the ladder. I will make it to commissioner. I like didn't really think about like who actually becomes commissioner, which lawyers usually, but I didn't really think about that. I was like, I will make it. This is the dream. And then by year 1, I was like, ooh, is this still a dream? I'm like, I don't know if I like it here. And then by year 2, I was like, oh, fuck, this is not the dream. I don't want to be commissioner. This is not it. Except at that point, from 10 to 25, I had spent more than half my life, 15 years of my existence, thinking that this was it. When people were like, what do you want to do? I'm going to be commissioner. It's so obvious. There was nothing else. Tunnel vision. And I like went through a full blown, like, what the fuck am I going to do? I took 6 months off. I road tripped. I bartended, drove around the country, met a whole bunch of people, camped, like went to national parks. And 12,000 miles later, I was like, okay, maybe it's still sports. And so anyway, I came up with a new vision. And then it became like broader life vision. I had this notion of a dream apartment in New York City. I grew up here. Not here right now, but I grew up there. And a life of enough, abundant enough, but enough. Like, and it wasn't that I needed to make millions of dollars. I was just like, okay, I'm doing these things. If it's not about a title and I stopped title chasing, if it's not about a company specifically, I stopped, kind of brand chasing. I was like, okay, I'm living in this way. I'm envisioning this apartment. I'm envisioning this life. I'm envisioning this kind of travel. I'm envisioning this kind of relationship. I'm envisioning like the activities that I'm doing. That is the dream. And I spent a solid kind of decade building towards that. And then I got there and then I ended up with like, for me, the deepest depression that I've ever been in my life. And I was in it for 2 months where I was like, there's no fucking point. There's no point to life. Not there's no point, but none of this matters. Like, I've gotten the thing and why am I not fulfilled? And the question that I kept struggling with is just like, what is this all for? Right? I've just busted my ass to get here. What is this all for? And I, at the time, was thinking about starting a business. And I was like, even if I invest all this energy and I'm super successful and I have the impact that I want to have and I help all these people, we're all going to end up in the same place. We're all going to end up in the same grave, in the same dirt. The universe is massive. We are, like, humans are a blip in the universe. We don't matter. Like, I went super deep in the existential, like, why are we here? Why am I here? If my life is meaningless, like, what's the fucking point? And it became kind of a full circle thing of like, oh, it's the being. Like, I don't have to do more. I don't have to strive more. I can set goals and I can go for them. But the fundamental understanding of meaning and connection with fulfillment and feeling like life is worth it, like what I've built towards is quote, quote, worth it, is in the everyday, is in the being present with the everyday, is in the aliveness of being myself, right? Of being to interact with the world, being in this dynamic, ever-changing environment, dealing with the shit like of life personally, but also crises in the world and feeling the impact of like suffering around the globe. When we have access to all this information now, it's like being present with all of it. No matter what happens in that day, no matter what is happening around our world, being in dynamic presence and connection with all of it. And that requires not much doing. Like, I'm going to do stuff in my life. It didn't mean I stopped doing things. This is 2018 when I was going through that depression. So 7 years ago, I've done a lot since, but I realized I was like, oh, the value is not in anything else I have to achieve. It's not in anything else I have to do. It's not in anything else I have to acquire. It's in being happy with the things I do have. And if there's things that I'm missing, working towards them. But it's about the connection with first me, because depression oftentimes is rooted in a deep disconnection, not only with your surroundings and other people, but yourself. And if I'm deeply connected to me, this person that I am, then I get to be deeply connected to everyone else because I get to be that person with everyone else in any setting, whether it's work, whether it's love, whether it's friendship, whatever it may be, whether it's strangers. And that shift from what else do I have to do? What other goal do I have to set? What other thing do I need to add to my life? Was a realization that the answer was nothing. There's nothing more I needed to add to my life. Sure, you could visit more countries, you could, go to more places, eat more delicious meals, have new relationships, meet new people, learn new things. But the doing doesn't matter. What matters is the depth of your being, the depth of your relationship with who you are and existing as that person. Whether you are learning a new skill, whether you are building a new relationship, whether you are starting a company, whether you're starting to figure out what to do with all the money that you now have since you've just sold a company. It's now being embodied this person who is no longer chasing some future existence, who's not waiting to be fulfilled and content and whole by some new thing you need to get and add. That it's not about more action, though you will act. It's about becoming and being your complete, whole, and true self so that you can act in an entirely present and aligned way, no matter what action you decide. Because when you've chased big dreams and you've achieved them, the only thing to do if you continue in that vein is just to set the next target and making another chase, starting another chase. That life ultimately is about the presence with your life. And where Western culture really gets it wrong is in the notion that self-actualization comes after all these things, right? This notion of a hierarchy of needs. But what a lot of people forget, or maybe not forget, never knew, is that Maslow's hierarchy is his own ideation, right? But he had access to communities, to philosophies that had a very fundamentally different view of self-actualization. And he rejected those and chose not to incorporate it into his framework. Because in the notion of a hierarchy, it is really individual. It is you meet these needs, you find belonging, You find your, so on and so forth. And then to the top is self-actualization. You self-actualize. It's very much about the individual climbing this ladder. Whereas the philosophy and community that had a fundamentally different view, at least one of them that's known that he spent time with and understood that they had a very different view, is the Blackfoot people, where their view of self-actualization is that, and I'm much more aligned to this when I read about it, I was like, oh, I think this too, is that we come self-actualized. I talk about this a lot in the notion of like, babies don't question their being. They just are. They know what they need, even though they can't communicate it. They tell you exactly how they feel, even though they don't have the explicit words. They express, they embody, they just are. They don't question who they are. They don't question their self. And the Blackfoot people had the same notion of like, you start self-actualized. And there is not a pyramid. There is not a hierarchy that you climb. There's no ladder. It is circular, that all of these things are needed. Your physiological needs, your group of, sense of being part of a group and your belonging and your inclusion, your intellectual stimulation and growth and emotional growth, like those are just different pieces of a pie. They're not like a thing here and a thing here, and once you get this, you can get to the next level. They're all component parts of a whole. And they work together. And self-actualization is the base of that. And another thing that's a base of it is community. That all this happens as a group. You do this in relationship with other people. You don't do it by yourself. And so often when we're striving for this goal, we might get, support. It's not like you think you do it by yourself. But the experience can be very solitary. People talk about how lonely it is. The pursuit of that grand dream, how hard it is to build a company and be an entrepreneur, how much you have to go through, the pain, the suffering, the sacrifice. Or running a marathon, or an Ironman. You are solo in that experience because you are the one who has to carry it through to the end. Those pursuits don't have to be such an isolated experience. When we do it in a collective, it doesn't have to be lonely along the way. But that requires us being present with ourselves and with other people, being connected, not thinking that you're on your own doing this thing. And the path of self-actualization, a lot of people think is a luxury, where I'm like, no, we've just gotten away from it. You started it. You came in your core, like you already have it. But our society trains us out of it. All the training that we receive to operate in this way, you have to follow these rules. This is how you're supposed to do things. Now chase the money. Now chase the success. Now chase the family. Now chase these assets. Now chase the next thing. It's so much doing, which takes you away from your core being. And I hear it a lot where people are like, I never got to explore my creative side. I never got to do these things because it's not lucrative. It's not profitable. I can't make a living doing that. And you get away from our core. So the way I think about it is actually a return. You're returning to yourself. The people who have seemingly the luxury of space and time and financial security often think self-actualization then becomes the next phase, right? Which fits Maslow's hierarchy. But if you think about the fact that you already had it and you lost it, then once you've achieved all those goals and realized there isn't more doing for you to do, that doing is not the answer, then it's the return. It's coming full circle back onto you. And if that journey is one that you feel like you're on, and if that message resonates, right, the fact that you are coming back to yourself, that it's a return and not a climb, that it's not like you're the lucky, privileged few who have now made enough in life and achieved enough in life such that you can self-actualize, then I'd love to meet you. Because that's the work that I do. And it's the most rewarding thing that I could imagine doing. Because in a world where, imagine all of us are whole and feel self-actualized, then the action we take, whether you decide to build another company, run another marathon, start another passion project, it'll be that much more aligned to who you are. And it will be that much more connected to the community and the collective. And the impact you will have is going to be that much greater. So I'd love to meet you if that's you.